So part 4, I can't encourage you enough to take a lot of notes in this part. Note taking is huge, especially if you are a hands-on learner. When you add additional functionality besides listening, you're pausing, you're writing, I guarantee you're learning more, and you're very seldom having to go back to your notes to study. You're learning things better. So I constantly encourage my students to do that. I want to encourage you to do that as well, whether you're a student or not. So let's dive in. Let's talk about computer network fundamentals. Now, again, realize that we're just covering the very basics, the stuff you need to understand in the aspect of basic network foundational concepts. But this is a career in itself. So literally, there are careers, roles, such as network administrator, that are responsible for maintaining and managing network infrastructure. This is just making sure computers can communicate over a network. This network administrator may not even be responsible for network security. That can be a whole nother team. That can be a whole individual. In a smaller company, that's going to be the same person who manages all of the IT, that IT person, if you will. So computer networking is a complex field, and I think it's better understood through the use of the OSI, the Open Systems Interconnect model. So that's how we're going to look at it. We're going to associate some key terms with layers of the OSI model. The OSI model is a requirement for the ISC2 exam, from the very basics. So that's really all we're going to cover here, right? But understanding this model helps us diagnose issues, such as where are packets being lost? Why isn't one device able to communicate with another, right? I always tell my students, whatever you do when you're troubleshooting an endpoint that's not communicating with the network, start with the physical layer. Start with the cable. Is the cable plugged in? Is the MAC card working, right? Is there a MAC address? Is there a network interface card? That's what I meant to say. And is it working? Start there, because inevitably, a lot of times it is that cleaning staff ran a vacuum underneath, they caught your cable, it got pulled out, you plug it back in, and amazingly it works. And of course, there's the whole restart as well, right? Did you restart it before you called me? So let's dive into the OSI model. We're actually going to start with the physical layer, layer 1. And we will work up, as you'll see in some great graphics that I hope you enjoy that I've provided for you. So, first of all, the OSI model, it's logical endpoints in a network that allow communication. Those are the ports. Protocol are the set of rules, okay, that we implement to control the communication at the different levels. And that starts with layer 1, which is the physical layer. It handles the transmission of that raw data, those bits, and those string of bits or bytes over a physical medium. So a couple key terms to know here is a bit. That is a single 1 and 0 in a binary string, okay, that in one program might create music and another program creates a spreadsheet, right? Put together 8 of those bits, we have a byte. FYI, 4 of those bits is called a nibble. If 8 bits is a full byte, then half is a nibble. So just a little fun and a little graphic here showing the physical layer. So what we see is, these cables connected with devices such as hubs, network interface cards. These can be wired or wireless today, okay? Data link layer, so as we move up, manages error detection and correction, flow control, accesses to the physical medium. So this is what allows data to travel and to be transmitted in a means that it will be received and understood and checked, okay? So a couple terms. Encapsulation is the bundling of data and methods together. De-encapsulation is unpacking, say, at the other end, okay? Network layer is responsible for routing that data and those packets across networks, i.e. across the big I internet. It assigns IP addressing. So again, routing with those addresses similar to your home address, trying to keep it simple here. Every home has a unique address. Even in an apartment complex, there's a unit number, right? So same thing here. Routable IP addresses, both in the IPv4 and now the standard IPv6. Okay. Now, we don't need to know any more than that. I will tell you in IPv4, there's only 3.2 billion routable IP addresses. That's why we have to take the internet. We have to segment it down to where your ISP gives you an IP address that is routed into their network and then finally routed onto the big I with a limited number of routable IP addresses over the internet. A couple key terms that you may be familiar with. So, using the ping command, so the ICMP protocol to determine if a service or host is available, right? Can we ping it? Can we communicate with it? And a broadcast is a one-to-many form where we send information to many devices. So we can broadcast, say a service request over a network together. Moving on to layer 4, again though, stop, do some research, learn as much as you can from a basic standpoint before you take your ISC2 so that you're ready for this certification exam. In the aspect of cybersecurity exams, it's a great introduction, but it's just that. It's an introduction. There's not a lot of hands-on learning that is provided in my classes in regards to this, which I think is essential. So, transport layer ensures reliability of end-to-end communication with error checking. So, making sure that packet on one end with a checksum is able to be produced at the other end. We could think of this sort of along the lines of a hash on a file. Remember, we download the Kali Linux operating system, we run a hash on the file, and we make sure we get the same hash that offensive security says we should get, so we know it's not modified. So similar sort of thing, this on the network layer. Ports, logical endpoints, and we see the ports that you might be tested on for the IC3. So you need to know 20, 21, 22, all the way down. Port 80 you probably are familiar with, 110 for post office protocol. We get into a little, security with 443 and then 3389. Now, 3389 is a key port to know. In the aspect of never do we want to access 3389 by opening that port on our firewall. We want to be able to do an encrypted VPN connection that will allow us remote desktop access into computers. A great example is the Equifax hack that happened years ago. If you want to do a little bit more research, look that up. That started with an open port 3389 available on the internet, and now all we needed to do was figure out what the cheesy username and password they were using, which I think was like admin and then a simple password that was finally guessed. That affected a lot of people's overall credit, risk, if you will, to their credit. So session layer, this is what establishes and manages and terminates those communication sessions as we're transferring data. When we start a session and make what's called the handshake, to ending that session for communication. So at this layer, NetBIOS is something to know. Point-to-point tunneling you might be tested on. I think I had a question on that. Used to implement virtual private networks. At this layer, that's what we need to know. It's a protocol. It's a set of rules commonly used for secure VPN connections, okay, like the Meraki that I used. Presentation layer, so this transports data into a format suitable for an application. So we've got this raw data in ones and zeros. Now we need to translate that so an application can understand that, and you're familiar already with SSL and TLS as it pertains to cryptographic methods to secure that data. Now, finally, before we leave this, it's hard to remember all these terms, and there's a couple great mnemonics for remembering these both bottom to top and top to bottom. So if we start bottom to top with the physical layer, you can see, please do not teach students pointless acronyms. That goes right along with any IT industry. We love our 3-letter acronyms. Or top to bottom, starting with, again, the application layer, which we'll look at in just a second. All people seem to need data processing. And finally, there's another one, if you're into pizza from bottom to top, please do not throw sausage pizza away. Anyway, always good to have some acronyms to help you remember, especially during the stress of a test. That application layer, that final layer, that top layer, right? This is, provides those network services to user applications. So now that we've translated that into information, in an aspect that the application can understand, now we can use that for processing. And a couple terms to know are file transfer protocol, as well as simple mail transfer protocol. Now, this doesn't do a really good job of explaining it, so I built this for you. I encourage you to pause this, read through this, maybe you even screenshot this. This will give you some more information as to what it does, what it supports at this level, as well as some ports and protocols, again, that you should be familiar with for the certification exam that I encourage you to take. So that's it for part 4. We've only got one more part left. And in this part, now that we understand the basics of networking, let's look at securing that network, concepts to do so, and finally, a short conclusion. I'll see you in the next video. I hope you're enjoying these. Please reach out. Please subscribe to my channel and make sure to comment so I can always improve my material. Take care.